Breaking utter silence fell across the House of Commons. Keir Starmer's face, pale and trembling, betrayed the unravelling of everything he had built. Then, like a thunderclap, came the name that shattered Westminster, Nigel Farage. The Speaker, stone-faced and unwavering, had spoken the unthinkable, and the reaction, instant chaos, audible gasps, phones lighting up. The Prime Minister didn't move. He couldn't, because this wasn't a rumour. It wasn't speculation, it was real. Nigel Farage was being named as Britain's next Prime Minister on live television. Within minutes, social media ignited. Farage trended in all caps. Footage of Starr's glassy collapse spread like wildfire. Commentators screamed, the public rioted, some cheered, others wept. Was this a revolution or a coup? Inside the corridors of power, panic metastasised. Ministers vanished. Civil servants locked doors. The King was informed within the hour. A seismic shift had begun, not just in politics, but in the very soul of Britain. This wasn't just a power change, it was a reckoning. And it all started with a secret meeting. The official story had always been clear. Keir Starmer would lead Labour into the next election, restore order after the Tory implosion, and bring Britain back from the edge. At least that was the fantasy. Behind closed doors, however, the truth was festering. Starr's control was splintering. Discontent brewed in silence. MPs whispering in corridors. Party whips losing grip. Allies retreating. But no one expected it to erupt like this. It began with a confidential vote. One not even reported in mainstream media. A parliamentary motion buried in procedural jargon. But it was no ordinary motion. This was a referendum hidden in plain sight. A challenge to the legitimacy of the sitting Prime Minister, a call for emergency reconfiguration of executive leadership, supposedly triggered by national security concerns. What the public didn't know, the motion passed quietly, decisively, and with it, Keir Starmer's authority was nullified without a single headline. Who orchestrated it? Leaks now point to a faction of backbenchers, cross-party and furious, who'd grown disillusioned with the centre-left drift. The stagnation, the compromises, they wanted strength, certainty, and they found it in the most controversial name in modern British politics. Nigel Farage, long mocked by the establishment as a sideshow populist, had been quietly building power meetings in Mayfair, dinners with donors, whispers in think tanks. While Labour obsessed over optics and policy revisions, Farage positioned himself as a saviour of the silent majority, no longer the Brexit caricature. Now a vessel of raw anti-elite rage. So when the Speaker of the House was handed the vote results documented, signed and binding. Protocol demanded action, and in that moment, live on national television, the mask of control slipped. The Speaker didn't hesitate. In accordance with Standing Order 67B and the result of the extraordinary resolution passed by the House, he said, voice unshaking, I hereby acknowledge Mr Nigel Farage as Prime Minister in waiting, effective immediately pending royal assent. The chamber erupted. Keir Starmer caught mid-response to a question on trade froze. His hands clutched the dispatch box like a man bracing for an earthquake. And then, visibly, he buckled. His voice faltered. Aides moved toward him, but paused. The cameras didn't. They stayed locked on his expression. Equal parts disbelief, humiliation, and moral collapse. It wasn't just his career ending. It was the implosion of his promise to the nation. Outside Parliament, the reaction was biblical. Supporters of Farage poured into the streets. We've taken back Britain. I burn again. Banners appeared within hours. Flares lit the night sky. Flags waved from windows, but there was no unity in celebration. Counter-protests formed immediately. Students, activists, union leaders gathered in fury. This is not democracy, they shouted. This is a hijacking. The police formed barricades around Downing Street. Parliament Square transformed into a pressure cooker of rage and revelation. The media scrambled. Some anchors refused to speak. Others broke into tears live on air. The BC's emergency panel descended into shouting matches. One former Tory minister, now a pundit, declared, "The old order is finished. Britain is not the same nation tonight." And through it all, Nigel Farage remained silent. For 12 hours, the man at the centre of it all vanished. No statements, no tweets, no press conferences. Rumours flew. Was he negotiating with the palace, meeting with my five, or was he letting the chaos breathe? Watching the nation crumble before stepping in as the solution, Keir Starmer, meanwhile, was transported from Westminster under security escort. Sources say he wept in private. By dawn, Britain was no longer a kingdom of calm tradition. It was a nation suspended in constitutional limbo. No word from Buckingham Palace, no formal rejection of the Speaker's statement, no royal clarification, just silence. And that silence was louder than any denial. Inside the palace walls, something was happening, something unprecedented, something not seen since the days of abdication and royal crisis, the monarchy. Once the last firewall between order and chaos now stood paralysed. Would the king approve Nigel Farage, a man who had spent years mocking the royal establishment, as the next Prime Minister of the United Kingdom? Reports began to leak. A courier had been sent to Windsor overnight, an envelope marked urgent, sealed with the crest of the Speaker's office. Inside the formal notification, the Commons had invoked its rarely used emergency clause. The Prime Minister had been politically defenestrated. The House, by procedural right, had named a successor. The King's role, ceremonial but powerful. He could delay, he could request more time, he could refuse even. But in doing so, he would step out of his historically apolitical shadow and into the inferno of British politics, a place no monarch had dared tread since the days of George V. The king, sources claimed, did not sleep. By mid-morning, his closest advisers were already split. One camp urged formality, honour the procedure, uphold the system. Another warned of catastrophe. Farage is not a constitutional figure, one court allegedly whispered. He is a revolutionary tuck. But revolutions do not wait for tradition to catch up. The public was already reacting. Polls showed a 50-50 split, one half jubilant, the other in outright rebellion. Cities across the north erupted into impromptu rallies chanting Farage's name as if he were a liberator. In Bristol, students took over the town square, waving EU flags and crying foul. In Liverpool, bus drivers honked in rhythm to the chant, "Farage is coming." Still, he said nothing. Nigel Farage had gone dark. No messages, no interviews. His phone was off. Even his own party, what remained of it, was unsure of his location. Some speculated he was in a safe house, shielded by security agencies, fearing retaliation. Others believed he had been summoned to a covert royal meeting, a backroom audition for power. But one thing was clear. His absence was not accidental. It was theatre, and the nation was his stage. Every minute he remained silent. The tension deepened. Every hour without a statement added fuel to the narrative that something far deeper, far darker was unfolding.